The atmosphere in Fairmont Crest has never been more suffocating, and I am absolutely on the edge of my seat watching the Dupree family navigate this relentless storm of tragedies. We all knew the tornado was going to leave a path of physical destruction, but the emotional and psychological wreckage it has left behind is truly staggering. Right now, the entire community is holding its collective breath as Catherine Cat Richardson and Eva Thomas undergo their high-stakes liver transplant surgery. Cat, in a moment of pure selfless grace, pushed aside years of bitter rivalry, hatred, and betrayal to save her half-sister's life. But as the latest spoilers suggest, a severe medical complication has arisen on the operating table. Now, the tables have turned in the most horrifying way imaginable. Kat is the one fighting for her life, leaving her parents, Nicole Dupree and Ted Richardson, drowning in a sea of agonizing guilt and terror. As if the life or death stakes in the surgical ward were not enough to shatter the family's sanity, we have another incredibly tense situation unfolding simultaneously. Martin Richardson is about to find out the result of his highly contested congressional primary election. The timing of this political revelation is almost cruelly ironic. Martin has poured his heart, soul, and endless resources into this campaign, but how can a political victory or defeat possibly matter when his beloved sister is hovering between life and death? Martin is already struggling with a mild concussion from the country club ceiling collapse, and the sheer weight of this overwhelming guilt and anxiety might just break him. He pushed Kat to take that donor test. He called her Princess Cat and questioned her compassion. If she dies, Martin will never forgive himself. So this makes me wonder, how is the rest of the Dupree family handling this unbearable pressure? The answer is not well at all. The latest teasers reveal that the bedrock of the Dupree family, Vernon and Anita, are going to find themselves locked in a bitter disagreement. This is a couple that has weathered every conceivable storm, from scandalous affairs to brutal illnesses. Yet right now, they are fracturing. There are a few very compelling theories floating around about what exactly is tearing Anita and Vernon apart during this critical week, and I have been analyzing every single detail to figure out the truth. The first major theory revolves around Anita's deeply personal battle with breast cancer and her ongoing recovery. We know that Anita has a scheduled meeting with Dr. Bauer for an important medical update. What if this disagreement stems directly from that appointment? The speculation is that Anita, completely exhausted and physically drained from the brutal side effects of her post-chemotherapy supportive medications, wants to stop taking them. She has fought so hard, but the toll on her body is leaving her feeling like a shell of her former vibrant self. She wants her quality of life back. However, Vernon, driven by an absolutely paralyzing fear of losing the love of his life, absolutely refuses to entertain the idea. He might be forcing her to strictly adhere to doctor. Bauer's rigorous medical regimen, no matter how miserable it makes her feel. If this theory holds true, we are looking at a deeply emotional and psychological conflict. Vernon could easily become dangerously overbearing, transforming from a supportive husband into a strict warden. I can clearly picture him monitoring her every single meal, tracking her sleep schedule, and hovering over her constantly. For a fiercely independent and proud woman like Anita Dupree, this level of micromanagement would be suffocating. She would feel like a prisoner trapped inside the gilded cage of her own home. I can already hear the heartbreaking accusations, Anita crying out that Vernon is treating her like a fragile, helpless patient rather than a wife with the fundamental right to make choices about her own body. Vernon, in tears, firing back that every single thing he does is out of profound love and the sheer, unadulterated terror of living in a world without her. This fundamental disagreement over how to face the cruel realities of aging, illness, and bodily autonomy would completely strip away their common ground, plunging this legendary couple into a devastating emotional Cold War. But that's not all. There is a second, equally dramatic theory that could explain their sudden, bitter conflict, and it ties directly back to Martin's primary election. Vernon has always been a man of immense pride, prestige, and ambition. He has mentored Martin, funded him, and proudly watched his grandson chase a lifelong political dream. According to this second theory, Vernon might firmly believe that regardless of the chaos surrounding Kat's surgery, Martin has a sworn duty to his voters and must push forward with his political ambitions. Vernon might argue that Martin cannot simply abandon the campaign trail even if the primary results are disappointing or if the family is in crisis. He wants to protect the dream that Martin has sacrificed his entire life to build. Anita, on the other hand, is currently operating from a place of raw, grounded reality. She is sitting in a hospital waiting room, terrified that her granddaughter might come out of those surgical doors in a body bag. To Anita, the concept of a political election right now is utterly trivial. She might argue that if Martin doesn't get chosen in the primary election, it is absolutely not the worst thing in the world. Why? Because Anita knows true grief. She knows that the tragic death of Kenny was the truly terrible thing that shattered their world. Losing an election is a temporary bruise to the ego. Losing a family member is a permanent bleeding wound to the soul. I absolutely love this theory because it brings up the deep, unhealed scars of Kenny's death, reminding everyone in the family of what is genuinely important. If this second theory is the root of their argument, it places Martin in an incredibly toxic and impossible crossfire. I can see Martin standing in the hospital corridor, completely torn. On one side, he has his grandfather, Vernon, pushing him to stand tall, face the press, and carry the Dupree legacy forward into the halls of Congress. On the other side, he has his grandmother, Anita, begging him to drop the superficial political facade, realize that family is the only thing that matters, and stay by his dying sister's side. Martin is already suffocating under the weight of his own guilt for pressuring Kat into the surgery. Being trapped in the middle of his grandparents' ideological war might be the exact catalyst that pushes Martin toward a complete psychological breakdown. My theory is that the truth is actually a brilliant, explosive combination of both of these scenarios. The sheer, unimaginable stress of Kat fighting for her life on the operating table is the match that ignites all the underlying tension in the Dupree household. Vernon's desperate need for control, whether it is controlling Anita's medication intake so she doesn't die, or controlling Martin's political narrative so the family doesn't look weak, stems from his absolute helplessness regarding Kat. He cannot control the surgeons. He cannot control the bleeding. So he aggressively tries to control his wife and his grandson. Anita, recognizing this toxic coping mechanism, pushes back with everything she has, demanding that Vernon face the terrifying reality of their vulnerability instead of hiding behind doctors' orders and political campaigns. And let us take a moment to deeply analyze the catastrophic implications of Kat's surgery. What is actually happening behind those closed operating room doors? The spoilers say she is fighting for her life and experiencing something strange. Could Kat be having a near-death experience? A vision of the afterlife where she encounters past loved ones? Or perhaps the strange experience is something far more grounded in soap opera reality. What if, during this massive medical crisis, a routine blood test or tissue typing reveals an impossible genetic discrepancy? I have been a massive proponent of the theory that Kat and Eva's parentage is not what it seems. We know Ted is the father of both, but what if the mothers were swapped? What if Leslie Thomas is actually Kat's biological mother and Nicole is Eva's? A severe medical complication during a liver transplant is the absolute perfect narrative vehicle to expose a decades-old DNA secret. If Kat's body starts rejecting treatments in a way that genetically doesn't align with Nicole's medical history, the truth could come spilling out. Imagine the sheer horror and dramatic irony if Leslie, who has been screaming at Kat and treating her like garbage, suddenly discovers that Kat is her actual flesh and blood. The emotional fallout would be biblical. Leslie would be utterly destroyed by her own past cruelty, and Nicole would be shattered, realizing the daughter she raised and pushed into this dangerous surgery isn't biologically hers. Furthermore, we have to ask ourselves about Kat's ultimate fate. Is she going to survive this week? The writers have painted her into a corner of pure martyrdom. If she dies a hero, sacrificing herself for the sister who once tried to ruin her life. But if she lives, the physical and emotional scars will be permanent. She might require a transplant herself now. She might be permanently disabled, forced to rely on the very family members who pressured her into the operating room. I desperately want Kat to pull through, but in the ruthless world of Fairmont Crest, no good deed goes unpunished. The tension is simply unbearable. We have Anita and Vernon's legendary marriage cracking under the weight of medical trauma and political ambition. We have Martin facing the hollow victory or crushing defeat of an election he no longer cares about. We have Nicole and Ted drowning in the agonizing regret of convincing their daughter to risk her life. And at the center of it all, Kat Richardson is floating in the liminal space between life and death. Will Dr. Bauer's update give Anita the ammunition she needs to reclaim her bodily autonomy, or will it give Vernon the ultimate excuse to lock her in a protective cage? Will Martin tell his grandfather to back off and abandon his political dreams to honor Kenny's memory? Every single character is currently standing on a razor's edge, and one wrong move will send the entire Dupree dynasty tumbling into the abyss. I cannot wait to see how these monumental clashes resolve. Will Anita and Vernon find their way back to each other, or is this Cold War the beginning of the end for the ultimate power couple? Will Martin choose his family or his career? And most importantly, will Kat open her eyes again? Let me know your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments below. Do you think Vernon is justified in his overbearing protection, or is Anita right to demand her freedom? Keep watching, keep guessing, and brace yourselves, because Beyond the Gates is delivering the most phenomenal, heart-wrenching drama on daytime television right now.